Hello, my name is Jader. I am the founder of Black Label Closers, an organization dedicated to help people become highly effective in the art and science of high ticket closing sales or high ticket sales. I'm really glad to be here today. We're trying to cover as many times as possible every week. We're trying to do the two lives. Sometimes a little complicated. The day gets busy, and sometimes I'm going to be able to do it. Sometimes I'm not going to be able to be here. But either way, 90% of the times I'm going to be here every Tuesday and Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I will. The more we start getting traction, the more consistent we're going to be. However, we have been very consistent for the past year. So regardless if we have a lot of people or very few people, doesn't matter. We try to be as consistent as possible. Consistency, right? That's the name of the game. All right. So today we are going to talk about something that, for the most part, a lot of the places where you're going to be trained, if you're not training with me, if you don't train with me, you're not going to be taught this simple but very important aspects of high ticket sales. Remember, this is a very psychological process. Sales is a psychological endeavor, if you will. So you have to be ahead of the game when you want to sell high ticket, especially when you're charging a high ticket for a particular product, service, merchandise, whatever it is that you sell, whether it's on the phone, in person, on a video call. I doubt that you're going to be able to sell things for high ticket for a lot of money. Just exchanging emails. That's maybe in some industries, commodities, maybe. But typically these type of transactions those relationships are very established, and all they need to do is just, hey, I have whatever, let's trade for whatever, and I make my commissions. That happens typically when you're selling a commodity from country to country, right? So I need 600 garbage trucks. Let's exchange that for coffee, whatever, right? So in the exchange, there's going to be money that you can make. But that's a totally different game. We're talking about commissions over seven figures. And if you get to one of those places, awesome. Because you're gonna be very well off if you catch one of those offers. You probably have to have a lot of connections. You probably have to work with NPOs around the world. You probably have to do a lot of intern work to be able to get to those high-end positions, and very, very lucrative. I've had a couple of friends that have. I actually had a couple of friends that were doing just that, and were doing really well. These guys were making over $5 million per transaction. Big commissions. Excellent. But we're going to talk about things that you don't expect. That most people shopping for a high ticket product will not expect. Keep in mind that most salespeople react across the board very similar in a very similar way. Everybody, especially because most of the people that are out there selling, most of these people, especially the new waves of salespeople, they have been trained by typically the same trainers, the same sources. So they're going to react pretty typical, right? I don't train people on how to react typically. I train people on how to make a difference, how to make a different proposition, right? So we're going to talk about just that today, right? Now, one of the reasons why this is so important when you are a real closer, an effective closer, and I believe this has to do with personality, how your character has developed throughout the experiences you've gone through, the way you have handled yourself, the propositions you've been given or given that you've been the situations you've been composed with, as far as professional decisions, the people you hung out with, the example, the training. I mean, there are a lot of factors that will tailor your personality to not be afraid to be different. And in fact, you being different, being an exceptional closer, is gonna come second nature, right, to the whole thing. So today we're going to talk on the title of today's live is React Unexpectedly Logical, right? React Unexpectedly Logical. One of the things that I always pound on is the fact that you must be logical. And here's what's really interesting: when you when you are logical, typically you're going to find yourself making the difference or being the difference, because most people, as logical as illogical as it sounds, most people have a tendency to answer reactionarily, not logically. So when you react to a question, to a challenge, to a proposition, to you're going to be reacting to emotions instead of being able to think about what the person is really saying and being able to react to that. I'll give you an example, quick example. Today we have, with the people that I'm training, the company that I'm working with right now, that I'm training for them, one of the guests at the live event came back and he wanted to be contacted. He asked to be contacted. And then the person got on the phone. Very nice gentleman, uh, with a lot of potential. A lot of potential. This guy has so much potential. We just need to kind of help him around the edges. That's all. But one of the questions he was faced with was, your the coach was talking about whatever transaction, and he made it seem so easy. I mean, it seems like I can do this. The guy was kind of in a challenging tone, right? And he said, I mean, if you guys are making it that easy, wouldn't I be able to do it? So is it really that easy? And he went on to give an answer that made sense. It was a great answer, coming from someone who's very logical in the way that he thinks. He's an engineer. I'm talking about the guy on our side, right? The guy taking the call. But one of the things that I advised uh, when I heard the conversation is, why don't you just, instead of giving them reasoning why something is not easy, why don't you give him an analogy that he doesn't expect, but he's not going to be able to refute? So the comparison to the transaction that he perceived to be easy, which is not, can be allocated within an analogy that makes sense. And one of the analogies I suggested was, well, let him know that, if a brain surgeon explains how he operates on a person, right, to extract a tumor, perhaps that explanation is going to be superficial and it's going to sound very easy. First, I shave the person's head, then I draw with a marker the area that I'm going to that I'm going to cut, right, that I'm going to crack open. And I'm gonna look for a circular saw, which is typically what they use to be able to crack to open the section of the skull that they need to extract. And then once they open that section, then they extract the tumor. Now that sounds simple enough. It sounds like something I can do, but there is so much embedded in that process that if I don't know what I'm doing, I'm pretty sure by the time I shave the person's head, I'm already going to kill the person. That's how sensitive that sounds. So what I'm trying to get at here is always illustrate something with a logical proposition, right? The brain surgeon proposition operating on a person's tumor is very logical to think that if someone were to explain something like that to me that's going to sound pretty easy. But in practical terms, I know for a fact Uh, I would need to be insane to think that I'm going to be able to do exactly what the surgeon does. It's the same thing with a transaction of us that requires engineering thinking to be able to process a transaction successfully. Just because it sounds easy, it doesn't mean that just anybody off the street can just go and do it, right? So if we explain things from a logical perspective, people are going to be less insulted, or not insulted, but they're going to feel less confronted. That's probably what I'm trying to get at, and they're not going to feel the pressure of a sale, right? So very important to have that in mind. So we're going to react unexpectedly logical. Right. So what's the first point that I want to make right here? How to react when your prospect talks about the competition. What I need you to do right here, guys, is I always want you to be respectful. Right. Respectful to your offer first and foremost. If you start being negative about the competition, that's not going to talk about the competition. That's going to talk about yourself, right? It's going to talk about first who you are as a person, right? Because if I talk about a third party negatively in front of you, that means that I'm going to talk about you negatively in front of others. How honest does someone who's demeaning the character of somebody else behind their back? How comfortable does that conversation feel? And how much does it take for somebody to muster the energy to convey messages that only carry intentions that are negative towards somebody else? So one of the things that I suggest is you never talk negatively about somebody else. Uh, there are some obvious reasons, right? There's one particular company that if someone tells me I'm looking into this company, I want to be a good human being, and I want to warn them against that possible move. That's the only reason why I would butt in and say, listen, I don't think that from the experience that I have in this industry, I don't think this is a good idea that you do business with this company. I see people investing $40,000, $50,000 with this company only to regret it, and they never get their money back. It's just so I would try to, if I really know for a fact that a certain outfit is screwing people left and right, then that's the only exception. That's only because I want to help a person not to make that mistake. But if someone asks me X, Y, and Z enterprise, I'm looking at them. I'm trying to find out, I'm shopping around. I'm never going to say X, Y, and Z is not as effective as we are, or they don't have as an effective process, or I'm never going to say that. All I'm going to say is, especially if they ask me, what do you think about him? And we'll talk a little bit more about that right now. One of the things that I would always say is I'm sorry, I'm not able to talk about what goes on internally with our company because I haven't been trained in the product or service, but I can tell you how exceptional we are and how effective we are. So let's focus on what we're here. I can't be of service and tell you, especially, and I'll be upfront with the prospect. I'll let the prospect know. Instead of me telling you something negative about that company, I can't tell you anything positive because I don't know them, but I wouldn't be able to tell you anything negative because I don't know them. So I'd rather stay away from the opinion that you're asking me. I think that people respect that about you and give you the chance and give you the chance for you to focus on what really matters, which is we're here to talk about the offer I represent, right? So very important to understand that and never say, even now, if you know something negative about the company, other than they're screwing people and they're scamming people, like I know about this one particular company, and that's the only exception that I would always tell people, caution people against, is that one company, and that's because I know for a fact that there are scamming people. Uh, but if I've heard of a company, you know, whatever negative aspect of that company that I've heard or read about, let's say they have a lot of negative reviews, but I've never heard of anything in concrete that I should make people aware, then I would probably abstain from talking negatively about another company, about a principal to another company, or the reputation of another company, unless I know for a fact that they're still scamming people, right? So that's important. I think I wanted to throw that in there because I think it's important for all of us to understand that being negative towards the competition doesn't really make you sales. To be honest with you, rely on your skills, guys. You have to have the skill to be able to stand on your own 2 feet. And if the company that you represent, and you make sure you're working for an ethical company with an ethical principle, then you know that you are going to be able to back your claim to the point that you're not going to feel apprehensive to elevate the quality of the product that you're selling, because that's what you're there for, right? Without lying about the product, the features of the product, the benefits, and all that stuff. Don't lie about the possibilities, right? Very important to understand that. Right. Number two, what to answer when they ask you to explain how your offer is different. I like this one because it's a silly mistake, guys. It really is a very dumb mistake when people try to explain to the prospect why my offer, how my offer is different. First of all, again, this is a little bit similar to what I just talked about. If we're talking about another company and that how we are different from that company, unless you have been trained in the details of the process of that offer, then you have nothing to say, right? Now, if you know firsthand how that offer is, and you understand the benefits of whatever it is that you're offering on this side, sure, I don't know that I would waste time talking about the differences. um, but especially if I don't know, in 99% of the cases, you're not going to have a clue what's going on the other end. So one of the things that I do is, if somebody is going to ask me, how are you guys different from the other offer? One of the things that I do is I tell them, listen, I got to be honest with you, but I don't have any clue what the other offer um, has, right? I don't know how they're better or we're better than them. All I can tell you is that we are exceptional every single step of the way. I know that the executives of this company, the brains behind the offer, they're trying to outdo themselves. And when you create competition within your own self and you want to improve what you have every single step of the way, rest assured that no one is going to be better than you, because everybody's looking at each other to be able to outdo each other, but no one is internally looking at themselves internally to be able to do better and come out with a better offer every single time, every single new year, every single new day, every single new month. So this is, I think, the most important and the only factor that I could probably pinpoint as being the only differentiating factor, is the fact that we're looking internally on how to outdo ourselves, on how to improve the offer that we have every single time that we have. The marketplace changes. We're going to make changes to stay on top of the changes. The legal system changes. We're going to make changes so that we can prevent legal problems, things like that, right? You're going to be on your feet, but never try, especially if you. In 99% of the times, you're not going to understand what the difference is between the other offer and your offer. It's just a waste of time. So one of the things that I encourage you to do is focus on what you have to be able to offer, focus on your own skills, and close deals based on the things that you dominate and you have control of. Because if you start saying things you don't know about another company, another outfit, uh, uh, they can catch you, making up stories or lying flat out, and you don't want to do that, right? So we need to make sure that you understand that. All right, let's go to the next point that I wanted to make here. The third is do not be apologetic when people tell you that they lost money before. All right, this is one of the things that most people, and I think every single trainer out there is training people on, telling people that when someone gives you the spiel or tells you that they lost money, say for instance, your offer is $20,000 to train someone how to do the stock market, and they're sitting, they're on the phone with you. They became a lead because they need what you're selling, right? So they know, they understand they need to be pushed in a way that they feel confident that you're not pushing them into a mistake, but you're pushing them into the right place, right? So if someone says to you, I lost money, uh, I paid another coach $15,000 a couple of years ago, and I never heard from them. I never did. One of the things that I do, and I train people doing, and this is something that shocks every single person that I train. And once they go try it, they come back, and I know they don't need to give me the feedback, but they give me the feedback anyway, telling me, you know what, Jader, that's like the best approach. Because I've been taught to always relay how bad I feel about them losing money, so they can feel that I reflect on their feelings. Forget about that bullshit, man. If somebody tells you that they lost money, instead of saying, "I'm so sorry," you didn't steal the money, so you should be sorry because you didn't steal the money. Do you feel bad about somebody losing money in the business world? Happens all the time. Happens all the freaking time. So instead of me expressing how sorry I feel, I express how lucky they are that they already got rid of um, the bad part of the law of average. The law of average is consistent. The law of average is going to have him make money and lose money. So they already lost money. Congratulations. Welcome to the club. You lost $15,000. Well, that means that you got through the garbage first and you are on the other side of the aisle. So you don't have to worry about, hiring another stupid coach because you already made that mistake. And that mistake, I mean, you'd be the most unlucky person on earth if had a back-to-back hire scanning coaches. So it's part of life, man. It's part of the search for success. Is you're going to lose money, and sometimes you make a mistake and you make a $15,000 mistake. The biggest mistake is not moving forward and giving up. Giving up is the biggest mistake you're going to make. That's one thing. Then I tell them if they keep talking about this, one of the things that I tell them is, listen, um, that's really bad and terrible that you lost money, but we have nothing to do with that, and we certainly don't want to pay for the sins of others, right? Uh, it, it wouldn't be fair that you punish us because somebody scammed you, right? We're not here to scam you. We're here to give you an honest and productive benefit. And if you're willing to believe that, then we can do business together. If not, that's your prerogative. And if you're afraid enough that you're going to give up at this point in your life, then I'm afraid you're not going to be able to move um, on in life. So that's what I tell them, right? And right there, I then make a decision. I cannot change people's perspectives about the lack of a guarantee of an investment, because nobody's going to guarantee anybody's investment, right? Now remember, you're the one who's got to make it work. I confront him a little bit. Did you lose that money because you didn't make it work? You didn't show up for classes. You didn't. What happened, right? I want to find out what happened. And they tell me no. They never called me. I called them. They never responded. They gave me the whatever, right? And then I understand the person probably got taken. There are a lot of companies out there that's why you got to be extremely sure that if you're going to work with someone, that you do the research first, that they don't have any lawsuits, any questions as far as the FTC, things like that. Everything is going to be reflected right on the online, on the internet, right? So make sure that you're not going to be, like I always say, right? You're not going to be ripping off people on behalf of somebody else. That's the worst thing, right? You want to be selling something that's legitimate and something that's good, and that you feel good when you go to sleep because you make good money. If you're making $200,000, you're making $200,000 based on things that are real, and you're not screwing people over. What to answer when asked if you are honest or if this is a scam? It's a very common answer question, especially when you're selling high ticket, especially when the people that it's not a very common question, to be honest. I say it's common and it's not at the same time. Let me tell you why it is common. It is a common answer if you're not earning the respect that you need to earn. This is called posture. If you're not posturing strong enough, if you don't have a strong enough posture, and people do not respect your tonality, they don't respect your demeanor, you're not you're not creating leadership in that conversation, then they're going to ask that question, and that's going to be a very common question. So if you're getting that question a lot, it's because you are doing something extremely wrong. But it's not very common because of the same fact. If you flip the fact around, if you are strong in your posture, if you let people know that you can be a leader to them, if you're building that leadership in that conversation, and that comes in in terms of a guidance, right? So that you can give them more of a consultation type of process, as well as persuasion, right? If you're doing that, then that question is not going to be a problem. You're not going to have that question. But once in a while, it kicks in, and you have to be prepared how to overcome the objection, right? So the best rebuttal is very simple, guys. I'm not going to, one of the things that I caution closers when I train them is do not stay away from defending yourself. If you fall into the habit of having to defend yourself, defend the offer that you're selling, defend the company that you're representing, then you are accepting guilt. You are a culprit. If you defend yourself, the only people that defend themselves are people that are guilty. If you're not guilty, you don't need to defend yourself, right? So never defend yourself. So if somebody is straightforward, they ask, this is a scam. Here's what I tell them. I tell them, you know what? I can appreciate that question. I think it's a question that I would ask at the same time. But here's the thing: I'm not a scammer. This is not a scam. But if I were a scammer and you asked me that question, what would I tell you? What do you think I would tell you? Oh, you'd tell me no, of course. But I'm not a scammer, so I would have to still tell you no. So it's the same answer. It's not like you caught me just because you're asking me for this. Just because you're asking me these questions, it's not like, oops, you caught me. I am a scammer. Sorry, my bad. Another day, right? It's not going to happen. Typically, and I tell them, typically scammers tend to act the part. And they're probably, sometimes they seem to be more honest and fair and transparent than the real deals. But all I can tell you is that we're ethical people. We make a living in an honest way. So if you're willing to trust, by the way, I only talk to people when they have done the research enough for them not to ever ask me this question. this is the reason why I never get this question asked. I never get somebody asking me if it's a real deal, if we're scammers, none of that stuff. Number one, because the lead already, for the most part, and I'm talking about 40% of the times, preferably, the lead has been around for maybe a month, maybe a few months. Some of them probably a year, 2 years. 60% of them have participated in a live event, a webinar, some sort of, something. They watch videos. If the offer you're selling is building good enough leads, you're probably going to have people that have done a little bit of research as far as the videos they watch and stuff like that. So I when I the way I solidify the the close, the final conversation is go do research, make sure that you're not going to ask me a question at the end when we're ready to make a decision. Oops, I don't know you guys. I don't know who you guys. I don't know. I mean, you sound like a great guy, right? You sound like a great guy. I remember one time. I guess sometimes people just don't do what you tell them, no matter how much you posture it. And the guy at the end of the conversation told me that Jader, you sound like a great guy, but you're a voice on the phone on the other side of the country. So I don't know. I can't just give you $20,000. At that point, I chewed his ass because I told him to do research. And in the beginning of the call, he said to me that he had done research, and I asked him, "Is it enough for you to trust that we are not going to do something funny in the process? Is it good enough?" He said yes. So there you go, guys. I believe that's all I got for today. Let me see if I got one more. What to answer? Nope, that's it. All right. Excellent, guys. My name is Jaden. I'm the founder of Black Label Closers, an organization dedicated to help people become exceptional closers in the art space of high ticket sales. You can go to www.blacklabel-closers.com. You can subscribe, hit like, make a comment, ask questions, give a different opinion if you have a different opinion. If you contest you're welcome to contest what I'm talking about here. If you have better ideas, go ahead, put them in there. Ask questions, whatever it is that you want to ask. Just go ahead and ask right here. Make comments. You can go to school.com, sign up, Black Label Closer Community, and we're going to be answering questions at that point as well. All right, Facebook, I'm there as well. Until next Tuesday, I believe. Next Tuesday, I'm going to be here, 7 o'clock. Talk to you then. Take care.